Yesterday, I scolded a stranger in a subway. Have you ever had to publicly scold someone you didn't know? Not me, but one of my customers where I used to work. This guy was being absurdly rude to me and my coworker. I had already told him quite clearly that there was a line, and he would be waiting in it in the order he came in. This was a high-end store at Christmas time, so a sense of entitlement is a little bit too common. He called my manager an idiot after having to re-ring something. Another customer behind him about half his size taps him on the shoulder and says loudly, "Would you mind shutting the frick up and letting these people do their jobs? You are seriously pee us all off." The bigger dude threatens him and the smaller guy goes, "If you were as tough as you think you are, you wouldn't have to be such a prick. Just shut the frick up." I magically found a 50% off coupon for my new favorite person. As a short woman, I am hereby memorizing that man's retort. My buddy and I were at a movie and these dudes who were talking about they had just got out of basic training were bashing the movie and laughing, making rude comments, etc. Well, my buddy tells them to pipe the frick down and they flip him off, but quiet down. After the movie, we are at the front of the pack right behind the 6 or 7 guys being rude, and my buddy says that was really rude to everyone how you were behaving, and one of them, the loudest, whips out his military ID and says, "Yeah, well, I'm a freaking Marine and I fight for your freedoms." My buddy, who just happens to be an officer, whips out his and says, "I'm a Marine officer and just because you have the honor of wearing a uniform doesn't give you the right to be a crap spewing pissant." Then he made them stand at attention right at the door of the movie theater and apologized to every patron exiting. What I love about this is that the corrective training the officer implemented was swift, equal to the offense, and, more than likely, effective in so much as 1. The young Marines learned that respect is something to be given at all times, and 2. You never know who will outrank you no matter where you go. I used to work in the toy department of a retail store. The Leapfrog laptop had just come out and they were really expensive. So I am straightening shelves and notice a kid just wailing away on one of these laptops. Mom is nowhere to be found. I approach the kid, ask him nicely, "Is that how you play with your toys at home?" The kid gave me a sheepish no and placed it back on the shelf. I was feeling pretty good about myself at that point when the kid's mother comes out from nowhere and very rudely tells me that I have no right to speak to her child that way. I calmly looked his mother in the eye and said, "Ma'am, your son was about to break a $150 toy. Our store has a you break it, you buy it policy. If you would like me to give it back to him so he can continue hitting it, I would be happy to ring you up at my register for the damages." She then proceeded to give me an eat crap and die look, grabbed her son and stalked off. In college, my friends and I were sitting at a table and behind us was a kid sitting by himself. I will admit, he looked a little douche-tastic. Popped collar, gelled hair, super tan, etc. A group of kids sitting in the same area had been laughing and talking loudly about his general fashion sense for a while. Eventually one of the girls got up, walked over and proclaimed loudly, "I'm sorry, but I have to help you out because you look like a total F," and put his collar down. The kid sat there in disbelief as she walked away and his eyes started welling up. I was pretty infuriated and walked over to her table. In the most conversational tone I could muster, I said, "Oh hey, do you know that guy?" She said she didn't. Then scolding began. "So you just thought it would be appropriate to demean a complete stranger in public to look like a freaking cool kid in front of all of your friends? I hope you feel better and that you all got a good laugh at his expense. Maybe next you can pause to reflect before you're a total butthole." I then walked over to the table and invited the kid to sit with me and my friends. Turns out he was gay, had just transferred to the college, and didn't know anyone. I used to work at McDonald's when I was in high school, so I sympathize with other teenage fast food workers. A while ago I was in the local McDonald's where I used to work, and it was apparent that it was the cashier's first day working there, but he seemed to be doing okay. He entered something wrong though and asked his manger how to fix it, and the manger comes over and starts staring into him in front of all the customers, calling him a freaking idiot and an inbred monkey and so on. After I received my order at the counter, I asked the manager to come over and told him, "Please do not talk to that cashier that way ever again. Just because you are a day shift manager at McDonald's does not make you a superior human being." and gives you no right to treat others, especially your employees, like dirt. After I sat down, the other manager came over and brought me some apple pies and thanked me for standing up to that guy. Apparently he acted like that towards everyone. I would call corporate. The last thing McDonald's wants is a manager running around cussing at employees in front of customers. I'm a pretty mellow guy who travels for a living. I don't really let the small things get to me. A couple of years ago, I was on a flight that was already running 30 minutes late. I was already thinking to myself that the connection was going to be tight, most likely involving running or a brisk walk for a mile or so through ATL. I'm one of the last aboard the plane and I had to check my bag since there was no more room. The 4 or 5 people behind did the same thing. What are you going to do? Well, I work my way down the aisle and there is a guy there asking people to shift bags, move stuff that won't move, etc. Well, he is trying to get his oversized bag to fit and there was no room. He calls for the flight attendant who walks up and says, "Sir, we are out of room. You will have to check your bag." Well, that was it for him. He goes off on her, starts yelling, "This airline sucks. I'm a Million Mile member. I want your employee number and name," and so on. At that point, I pretty much mentally snapped. I felt horrible for the flight attendant, who was just doing her job, and this guy spent 5 minutes making an butt out of himself and burning up time that we could be airborne. People were gawking, looking away, cringing, and overall just hoping he would stop so they could move on. I just yelled, "Shut up. Shut the heck up." At this point I was shaking with anger. I then went off. "Take your bag to front of the plane. Check it, and stop with this insanity. You are what is wrong with air travel. Your sense of entitlement makes me want to puke. If you are a million-mile flyer, you know the rules of flying. You should know how this works. Why punish everyone on this flight? You have insulted this lovely young lady. You have made everyone on this plane uncomfortable with your little show and I'm now another 5 minutes late for my connection. I want you and your little Napoleon complex issues." He was about 5'5", "to shut up and sit down. Do we have a problem?" He started spluttering and looking all flustered, but didn't say a single word. Somebody at the back of the plane started clapping. Soon the whole plane was applauding me. I just sat down and waited while everyone clapped and this guy took a long walk of shame to front of the plane. The flight attendant thanked me and so did everyone else. I didn't mean to do it, but I just can't stand people like that. The best part, I had free drinks for the flight. The FA gave me a stack of free drink cards for my next couple of flights and one of the passengers gave me a voucher for free Wi-Fi that he had won. It was very satisfying. Back in college there was a mentally challenged guy who worked in the dorm dining hall. He obviously had some problems, but was with it enough to hold down the job, remember certain students, carry on conversations, etc. One day I was behind some girls in line who were standing right in front of him talking about how they didn't like being served by the retard and so on and so forth. I said, "He has ears. He can hear you. He's a person just like the rest of us and you shouldn't treat people like that." They called me a B and walked away. I once caught 2 kids, around 12 years old, about to throw a Coke can at an old woman from across the street. I got in the way and yelled at them to freaking try it and see what happens. They stopped in their tracks and tried to deny what they were about to do. Afterwards I felt bad and thought maybe I'd overreacted and could have used less threatening language towards 2 kids, but frick it, it's probably the only way I was gonna get through to them. The old lady was completely oblivious to the whole thing. It wasn't me, but I was incredibly grateful. I'm a student in a culinary arts program. We rotate those stations and run a full operation-sized cafeteria on the university campus. One of the stations, desserts, requires that you serve and plate in front of the customer. I was helping this one woman and another guy, who comes in every day and is the rudest customer I've ever dealt with, budges in front of her and reaches for the dessert that I'm still plating. She says loudly, "Excuse me, that is mine." She's not done and you can wait and not be so rude. You are unbelievable. He walks away with an unhappy, childish look on his face. She looked at me and said, "Sorry, I can't stand rude people." I couldn't have been more grateful. TLDR. Had a customer stand up for me against a really rude regular. My dad was driving around with his terminally ill friend. They needed to go to a pharmacy, and seeing as how my dad's friend gets short of breath easily, they were hoping for a handicap spot. Unfortunately none were vacant, so they had to park farther away. As they were walking up to the store, a squat muscular man comes walking out of the pharmacy and starts to open up the door of his Ford F-150 parked in a handicap spot that he clearly didn't need to be in. Nor did he have a sticker. My dad's friend called out to him as he was getting in. "Excuse me? Yes? Is your handicap physical or mental?" The guy's face went white as a ghost and he quickly got into his truck and pulled away. I was at the grocery store on my lunch break. This older woman, who had some obvious mental emotional problems, was walking up to a checkout like. She went to take her salad out and it opened up and just went everywhere. So, she starts crying and saying how she can't afford to buy another salad and apologizing for the mess. A clerk and I went over and start helping her. The clerk tells her it happens all the time and that they won't charge her, but the woman is still visibly upset and continues apologizing and crying. Then I hear two 45-year-old women, hair all done up, expensive clothes, etc. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, giggling and having little laughing outbursts every time the old lady says something. I was appalled, but whatever. To my amazement, they then start openly mocking her, loud enough so we all could hear, and flat out laughing at her. At this point, I stood up, grabbed my basket, walked over near them and quietly said, "Come on, quit it." They both stopped laughing and get beet red with anger. One of them then says, "Excuse me? Who the frick are you?" I calmly replied, "It takes a lot for me to get mad. She's obviously upset. She can hear you over there, and it's embarrassing for you and her." This is when they both lose it, saying, "Who the frick are you? Who the frick do you think you are? Don't ever talk to me like that," etc. To which I replied, "Listen, I know you're both really unhappy because you married a man for money and now he's cheating on you with a much younger woman, and your kids probably don't respect or like you because you're obviously a crappy person. But you don't have to be mean to strangers. If you want to laugh, whatever, but don't start mocking people. Try to contain yourselves and act like the adults you never had to become." They were shocked. "It was really funny," they said. "We're not paying for this," and just walked out, leaving their food behind. Then the checkout clerk just started laughing and the guy behind me went, "Frick yeah, I kind of think I did a bit of an overkill." But I was really shocked at how mean they were being. I freaking hate people that think it's completely okay to mock and make fun of people they don't know, yet think it's blasphemous for people to stand up for the people they're mocking. Good on you, friend. When I was in 5th grade in after school care, a lady grabbed my brother, who was in 3rd grade at the time, by the neck, picked him up and threw him 3-4 feet against the lockers for pushing her child out of the way when her kid cut in line in front of him for the water fountain. I couldn't freaking believe it. I just started going off on her. I was calling her every freaking thing I could think of while following her out the door. This wasn't your normal 5th grade insults. My dad is a Marine. I was saying all the crap I wasn't supposed to have heard from him that I built up over the years. I followed her and her kid out the front door and got just about to the circle where buses pull in to pick up the kids before she turned around and came at me like she was trying to kill me. There were no teachers around. They were all inside trying to find out what was going on. It was just me and her, and I could see it in her eyes that she was really going to hurt me. She grabbed me by the shoulders and picked me up and shook me as hard as she could. The whole time I was screaming, why UCCCUUNNNNTTTTTT. Then I heard car brakes and my mom football tackled her and beat the holy heck out of her. My mom had layers and layers of that lady's skin caked under her nails and bruised knuckles from punching her so hard. That night I got ice cream for trying to protect my brother and sent to bed early for saying knowing the C word. Good times. I love my parents. I started laughing hard picturing you being shaken while bellowing out a C-bomb. That needs to be in a movie about a cheeky young man and his misadventures. Went to see the Wolverine movie in a really big theater, about halfway up the rows of seats. It had an aisle that cut across horizontally from one side of the theater to the other. Summer Shat father was there with a toddler, and he let the kid run back and forth across the aisle, squealing the whole time. I put up with it for about 30 minutes, and then finally went down to the father and said, "Do you realize the entire movie theater can hear your child, and that it's ruining the movie for the rest of us?" Please make him be quiet. The father stared at me in complete shock, as if the concept had never crossed his mind. He left immediately with his kid. Several people around me said thank you as I sat down. That stare of complete shock is when he realized, oh god, I'm that guy. One time I was at a show in Philly. It was in between bands and everyone was milling around outside the venue. As I was standing, talking to some friends, I noticed 5 or 6 wannabe hardcore kids harassing this homeless guy. They're kind of pushing him around, forcing him to take pictures with them, and talking down to him. Eventually the guy slumps down on a wall pulling his knees up and starts crying as these guys are degrading him more and more. One of them shoves his camera phone in the dude's face saying he's gonna make him famous on YouTube. At this point I've seen and heard enough and just lose it. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I remember flipping on these dudes for about 5 minutes. Along the lines of how that guy has nothing and you have everything compared to him, yet you are worthless. How disgusting what they were doing was. How sad and pathetic they were. I didn't care, it was 5 or 6 guys who could probably together beat my face in. I knew that there was no threat towards the end of my tirade when they were all staring at the ground, red in the face, clearly ashamed of what they did. As my verbal berating ended I was greeted to applause from everyone. I helped the old guy up and took him to Wawa and bought him some dinner. He was weeping on the way there, thanking me, saying he never had anyone stick up for him in his entire life and how I came out of nowhere to help him. It felt good, man. You're one of the good guys, Sir D's nuts. People like you make the world a little brighter. I was helping my grandparents run errands one day, and while my grandfather, who was injured during test fire in France during the war, had stood up out of the store mechanized wheelchair so that he could use the ATM, some 19-year-old thug walked up and sat down in it. I gave him 3 polite versions of he's using that before he responded saying chill out, I'll get up in a minute. I started to explain that I wanted the chair available in case he lost his balance or anything, then thought better of it, instead staring homeboy in the eyes with a deadpan get up, mother, sucker. To which the dude responded with a who you think you talking to? I told him I'm talking to you, mother. Get up. Now, he responded with who you're talking to again. Note, if the person isn't scared of you the first time you say that, it's just gonna make you look dumb. At this point he still hadn't gotten up, so I rushed the cart fully intending to flip it over, and when homie saw that I was serious he jumped up and started muttering about how I'd better hope he never sees me again. As a side note, my grandfather is 91 and looks just like Jimmy Carter, except maybe a little bit more unassuming. And I don't think I've ever seen him prouder than he was at that moment. In college, for a Spanish class I was taking, I had the opportunity to go see a foreign film for extra credit. I had to take notes during the film, so I could write a brief summary of the movie to turn into my Spanish professor. The movie is playing in one of our big lecture halls by the Foreign Film Club at my school, so there was a lot of students there watching. I get to my seat, settle in and start watching the movie. About 10 minutes and 2 girls enter the hall and proceed to make a lot of noise, like nothing is going on at all. They take their seats in my same row, but on the other side of an aisle. They continue to talk for the next 10-15 minutes, loudly, while the movie is playing, not giving any fricks. I can tell the people around me are annoyed with subtle ahems and groans and multiple head turns to look at the girls, but no one really does anything, and the girls keep talking. Finally, I've had it. I get up, walk over to the girls and ask them in the most polite voice I could muster, as I was very annoyed. Please excuse me ladies for interrupting your conversation. Would you mind shutting the frick up so the rest of us can watch the film? I just stood there and they got very angry and left. The entire lecture hall applauded and the movie went on. There were no more interruptions. I left that place feeling 10 feet tall, well worth the 25 extra credit points. One thing I've learned is to never underestimate what one will do for extra credit. As an ex-Subway employee, thank you. I once told off a customer in a retail store for being rude and mean. She made one of my staff cry. She was so awful. The general gist of what I said was, do you feel better about yourself after you make this 17-year-old girl cry? Was it really necessary? Until you learn to treat others with respect, I do not want to see you in my store again. Leave before I call security. Worked at Walmart years ago. When it was slow, cashiers would be sent out to the floor to tidy up the store and help out the people working in different departments. I was helping out a friend of mine in the children's department one day when a woman and her 2 kids came into the department. One child was still an infant, but her daughter looked to be around 4 or 5. The woman was looking around, completely ignoring her daughter, who kept trying to tell her mother that she had to go to the restroom. The kid wasn't whining so much as saying, "Mom, I have to go." The mother kept ignoring her or absent-mindedly telling her to hold it. Finally, the little girl says, "Mom, I have to go," which wakes up the little one. The baby started crying, and the mother finally addresses her daughter by yelling at her for being a pain in the butt. My friend and I were listening to this. It wasn't hard to overhear, looking at each other as if to say, "Man, what a bee," but there wasn't much we could really do. Then the woman screamed, "Will you shut up? I wish you had never been born." I was stunned. I couldn't believe anyone would say that to their child. My friend literally dropped what she was doing and said, "What did you just say?" The woman started to say something about minding your own business, but my friend cut her off by launching into one of the most frightening displays of righteous anger I've ever seen. She tore into this woman, telling her that it was obvious that the little girl had needed to go to the bathroom because it's all she had been saying for the past 5 minutes, and that it didn't matter how frustrated you were with a child. You never tell them you wish they hadn't been born. The scumbag woman couldn't say anything in her defense because she was caught being a T to her child. I can't remember exactly what she said, but I'll never forget how it ended. My friend finished telling this woman she was a failure as a parent by saying, "You're the reason birth control should be freaking mandatory. Take your kid to the bathroom." I could have freaking clapped. It was so perfect. The woman left without saying a word. My friend got hauled into the office shortly after that. Apparently the woman complained to management on the way out, but she said she was completely justified in what she did and would do it again. The manager told her that he agreed with her, gave her a warning, and told her good job. TL. Doctor. Friend and I overhear a white trash woman tell her daughter she wishes she was never born. Woman gets told off by friend. Friend then praised by manager. I went off on someone who pushed their shopping cart toward the little corrals, but it ended up hitting a parked car. They didn't bother to look or put the cart away properly. I also went off on someone who slammed their car door into the parked car next to them several times because they parked too close. The lady doing the door slamming was parked over the line. The vandalized car was dead center of the spot. I took down her license plate number, went into the store and found the owner of the other car and let them know. Whoa, my car door opened a little more forcefully than I was expecting. Just as another car pulled up, bam. I felt honor bound to tell the woman getting her kid out of her car that I had hit her car. She didn't even realize it. We looked at the spot and saw no damage. All was good. But that's why I have insurance. No skin off my neck to own up to any potential issues. I was once on the train on the way to an appointment in the afternoon. I'm just sitting in my chair minding my own business when out of the corner of my eye I see something weird going on. There are these two 17-18-year-old Spanish kids harassing this 14-year-old white kid, calling cracker and white trash and all that. Okay, I'll let that slide and mind my own business because I have a meeting to get to. Moments after that happens, I see the two Spanish kids getting closer and closer to the white kid and they start smacking him in the face, demanding that he give them his iPod and headphones. This drove me over the top and beyond. I instantly became furious. I stood up and yelled, "Get the frick off him, you little shoots." Apparently nobody was paying attention to the situation and looked at me like I was crazy. Anyway, I make my way for the two kids and the train pulls up at the station. They begin to start talking crap to me and throwing some stupid gang signs up, and all of a sudden this little Spanish lady behind me starts cursing them out, calling them idiotas and desgraciados, idiots and losers. And everyone starts joining in, telling them what idiots they are. I try to grab a hold of them and call out for the police. It's a popular station where cops are usually around, and they just book. The kid thanks me and everyone on the train. I make sure he's okay. I go to my meeting feeling I did some good for the day and was happy I could help. I've been tossed out of 3 food service establishments for standing up for employees being mistreated. I managed a pizza shop for 3 years, had to let too many buttholes come out unscathed, and now that I have that experience I will absolutely not tolerate some shithead screaming at an 18-year-old waitress cashier over 6 cents worth of ketchup. Be warned, you act a fool in a restaurant, I will make for goddamn certain you do not enjoy that meal. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.